Hello, welcome back to I Got Board Game.
Board game.
I got board
Board game. I
game.
got board game.
I'm Ben,
John.
and today we're here with another Kickstarter preview of a game that is very popular with an IP that is very popular, and there is still about a week and a half left in the campaign. So hope you're checking this out and coming in to get information on if you uh, want to back this or not. And that game today is
X-Men.
X-Men. X-Men 1, 2, 3. Days of Future Past. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. That's totally what I thought last time. We gotta hum that when we're like playing this game. Da-na-na-na. All you 90s kids would recognize it.
Oh, it's on Disney Plus now too, so go watch it.
Is it real? Oh yeah. That makes sense.
Go watch X-Men.
Yeah, so for real though, the campaign is X-Men, not the one that John showed the picture of. I'm gonna share the screen of the Kickstarter page. Here we are. Marvel United X-Men. That's what we're going to be doing a preview of today. And so keep in mind, being a preview, we don't have the game. We haven't played it, but we've looked through this page, looked through some of the rules, watched some other videos, commenters, board game reviewers on this or even the previous set, because this is the second campaign by Simon, or Cool Mini or Not, very big board game publisher known for their miniatures and the quality detail to them. And about a year ago, they had a campaign for Marvel United, not X-Men, just Marvel United. And that was the first set with, a lot of the popular Avengers characters that we know from the Marvel Cinematic Universe nowadays, but then gradually unlocking more and more stretch goals as they got more and more funding, more money, more backers to, have additional expansion sets for Black Panther characters and Spider-Verse characters and Guardians of the Galaxy and all the ones we know from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And that campaign did pretty well. I think it made maybe a couple million, if I remember correctly. But then this really caught my attention this time, since I didn't back that original campaign, because I think the style, the look of it seemed a little too simple, and I didn't necessarily like the art style to the characters. But then more recently, I think other reviewers in the board gaming world have gotten their copies of at least the base game of Marvel United, the original one, and have given it really high praise and reviews because of its simplicity and how easy it is to set up and even just play with their family members, kids. And so then when this Marvel United X-Men launched, I thought I would check it out this time, especially since I don't have like X-Men stuff really. I was kind of thinking, okay, maybe this would be a good jumping on point for me where I can experience the Marvel United game with its slight improvements that they have in this campaign, but with the X-Men IP, which is something I grew up with, obviously, but just don't have games of. So yeah, it'd be a cool kind of way to try it out. And so this campaign, as you can see, has 15,000 backers so far, more than $2.5 million, and still a week and a half to go. So I think this could pretty easily reach 3 million. And someone else was even saying it could possibly reach 4 million and basically just do better than the first campaign, since it's been getting such recognition now. But yeah, so we're gonna go into this, kind of letting you know what you can get in this campaign, like the characters, some of the changes maybe from the original Marvel United game, because there are some changes they've even done to the rules to add more to this. I think maybe based off of maybe comments from other backers over the year of things they would want to see. And so to start off, we will actually have John give really just a brief overview of how the game roughly plays.
I'm gonna explain rules the first time.
Yeah,
Woo!
don't mess it up, John. We wanna know how to play correctly.
So as you can see here on the board, what Ben is showing, basically what this game is it's a cooperative game where you work together as playing as the heroes. In this case, with the IP, you're playing as the X-Men, and you're going to be fighting against villains. So it's, as I said, cooperative, and the way that the game works, it's actually similar to some other games. If you're familiar with like I believe it's the Legendary, the DC Legend, is it
Oh,
Legendary?
like Marvel
Or
Legendary.
Marvin Legendary, or DC also has the DC Deck Builder,
Mm.
where basically you will have these characters that you play as your main characters, and each player will have a unique hero that they utilize, and there'll be these locations on the board, and there'll be a villain, a super villain that you'll be trying to defeat in the game. So for people who know X-Men franchise, if you watch the movies and all that stuff, Magneto, for example, is a bad guy. A lot of the people, his henchmen like Mystique or the Blob or Toad, all those kinds of characters would be like some of your example villains that you'd be fighting against. So the way that the game works is all of your heroes, you'll start in particular locations, and the villain will have their unique objectives and goals that they'll be doing in the game, and they'll have different ways of achieving victory or your defeat in this case. And so the way that the game will work is the villain will have a deck, and they'll be playing out these cards over time and in what's called the storyboard track. So it'll start off with a villain doing some action, whether it's moving, whether it's doing a special villain action, or some other icons of adding civilians that need to be rescued, or adding their little henchmen into the spaces that could further their objectives in the game. And then as the heroes, the unique thing about this game, or this kind of play, is you as the players will be able to place a card onto the board, and you'll have these icons that allow you to do different things, whether it's moving, whether it's attacking or fighting, or it's doing a special heroic action, usually are the three kind of icons. And then the way that the cooperative aspect of this game especially plays out is after a player plays one of their cards, the following player then gets the powers, not only of the card that they play or the icons that they play, but they also get the previous cards, icons, or powers in addition to the ones that they just played. So in that way, you have to work together and kind of deciding how you want to either increase the amount of things that you can do in your turn based on the cards that you play, as well as how it'll affect your fellow teammates' ability to do things in the game. So the gameplay kind of revolves around that way. So as I mentioned, there's locations, then there's these threats that are on each of these locations that you need to kind of help solve and beat. And the way that you fight the villain is you have to solve 2 of 3 kind of major things, or objectives, which is the 3 objectives being saving civilians, beating up henchmen, or clearing threats from the locations. So as long as 2 of those 3 objectives are achieved, at that point, you are then allowed to start fighting and damaging the villain to ultimately beat them and win the game.
Okay, great.
Game.
Yeah, no, thanks, John. So yeah, that's like a brief overview of how the game plays, and I think the simplicity, kind of going into something that I've heard really that sticks out about Marvel United in general, is this system of just each person playing one card from their own deck, right? That's part of the fun part of it, is as the specific hero, you have your own deck of cards. And so from your hand, you'll get to play a card, and then your teammate on their turn plays a card and gets your icons plus their new icons to do actions. And I think it's a very clean and easy to understand system, which then they also put in this circular way, like you're supposed to put your cards out in this circle to kind of, in a sense, like show it in, I don't know, kind of like a cinematic way that this is the action that's going down in this story. It's happening in this order, these different actions between the heroes and the villains. So yeah, I think all of that's simple to understand, and that's probably what makes it really fun. Especially, I heard when you play cards that have wild symbols on them, and that's kind of like you feel really powerful, but then it also gives the next player those wild symbols, so it's kind of like that very kind of like teamwork feel to it. So yeah, that's kind of what uh, I've heard is appealing about the game. I don't know what you think about the mechanics or anything about that.
And in that sense, it's very simple, and I think that is kind of a really cool draw, especially for a cooperative game. And I think this was actually something I was hearing, listening to some of the other reviewers as we were preparing for this discussion. Is a lot of cooperative games in general tend to be pretty long games, right? Where usually you have to spend a lot of time discussing or deliberating about what you should be doing or how you should be playing and stuff like that. Because even in some of the simpler, or like I would say more simple cooperative games like Pandemic, for example, which is kind of one of the strongest and best and one of Ben's favorites, that game still takes, I think, on average about 45 minutes to an hour to play through. And that's even if you know how to play the game and play fast. Like, it does take some time to play through. In this game, it's about a 30-minute game is what I've heard, right? It's like, it's a very fast gameplay. I guess you could spend a lot of time discussing, and if you really want to be like, I don't know, right? But like, the idea of this game is to be played very quickly. There's not a lot of things that you have to keep track of in that sense. And again, especially in terms of player decisions, you really don't have that set of cards, and it's only gets so many icons. It's not like every single card has like its own unique text and its own unique action, because while that might be cool in some ways, it really makes a game very complicated to play versus having in this game very simple, like there's 3 primary icons. Although speaking to that, that is one of the variations, and Ben was mentioning like this version of Marvel United with X-Men actually does add a number of new things to what the base game used to have, which one of the things is all of the heroes actually do have more unique powers now, because I think that was one of the early criticisms of the previous installment, which is that there was only maybe one very unique card to each hero or each kind of deck. So some people felt like it was kind of like, well, if we know these superheroes and, Marvel Cinematic Universe, X-Men movies of the past, right? Like, that these heroes all have their unique abilities and powers. So can I have a little bit more variety in the game, which is what they did in all of the heroes for this Kickstarter or for this campaign, is all of the heroes will have those, at least 4 different special effects with 2 types or more powers that occur in their deck. So it gives you a little bit more speciality, and you even start with some major kind of unique or key item or key cards that are like, special to these heroes to start in your game. So it's like you feel like you're really that superhero right from the get-go.
Yeah, and I think on that point, like that's kind of the nice addition that's like both thematic and adds to kind of the variety in the game that I like to see. Because obviously I didn't know about that being lacking in the original, aside from, after listening to reviewers kind of point that out, where like all the heroes can kind of feel the same, but it's the villains that make it different. Where then in this one, like the villains do make it different because it changes like maybe the goal that you'll need to reach to be able to fight the villain. But yeah, really just having like all these heroes with even more unique powers. That's actually what's drawn me to read some of the update emails I've been getting from this campaign recently, of like when they unlock a new stretch goal character, which we will show you later. They have unlocked a lot, as is the case with almost all CMON Kickstarters. There's a lot of exclusive unlocks. But with each characters, then they show some of the cards, just a few of the cards in the decks. And I do enjoy kind of reading like, how do they capture this mutant's power in this game? And especially if it just has like the title of the action, like if X-Men, like you'll read some of the titles like, Optic Blast or whatever, like you'll know like that's fitting for that mutant character. It's like, that's a cool little touch. And to be able to play as that character then it makes it that much more fun.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that's one thing they add. And then another thing I think is cool that they added is apparently in the original campaign, I think I had heard that one of the maybe exclusive characters that were unlocked was like a character that they did in this purple color, as you can see down here, because looking at this picture, you can see the good guys, putting it in quotes,
Heroes.
heroes, there you go, heroes, are in blue, right? So those are the ones you would play as, these heroes, these, in this case, the X-Men with Xavier, right? Xavier, Wolverine, Jean Grey, Cyclops, Beast, and Storm. And then you have the villains in red, like Sabretooth and Juggernaut. But then you have purple figures, which are characters who can be either used as a hero or as a villain in a game. And I think, yeah, in the original campaign, they might have only unlocked one exclusive character to do that. But I think maybe people liked it so much that they made it like a, you know, more of a point to include more characters like that in this version. And so you have Magneto and Mystique here in the base set that can, yeah, be a hero or a villain. And I think that's also very cool use of those characters.
And it's a cool use because it's kind of canon to the comics or to the movies, if you know, like depending on, you know, the different maybe the movies not so much for X-Men and the franchise as it was, but definitely in the comics it's really cool because throughout the comics there's a lot of times where these kind of villain characters or sometimes even the hero characters kind of flip depending on the universe or depending on the storylines of what's happening, where for example Magneto sometimes has actually allied with the X-Men, for example, and actually is on their side and working with them for particular things. And like the whole conflict with Magneto and, you know, Professor X throughout the whole series is kind of their perspectives on how to approach something that they're both trying to achieve. So sometimes there are times where they align together and they understand that they have a common goal or a common enemy to work together. And which is why it's really cool to see, like, you can play him as like a hero because he's like, in this circumstance, he's like, I need to help you, or it's in my interest to support you. But then, of course, also, you know, Magneto is a very key X-Men villain, so you can also fight against him, which is really awesome. And on that note, just as a design standpoint, using colors, it's cool that blue and red combined together turns into purple.
I did think of that too.
Joining as two different enemies. So that's also cool that they actually even use the coloring of the figurines themselves to indicate they could be one or the other. So,
and so I'm actually just opening up the previous campaign that I had mentioned earlier on, just to show you what that looked like, right? This has all the basically characters that people know from the Marvel Cinematic Universe that they used for in the first campaign. And this one, the original raised 2.86 million. So
very close.
So yeah, so this one's already gonna most likely gonna surpass it already, right? With 10 days left. But the reason why I actually wanted to open this one was we're talking about some of the things they added to this original campaign that was back in March 2020, apparently. The thing I did want to clarify is like this is kind of the art style the original had, which is pretty much the same as in the new X-Men version. But this is kind of what turned me off originally. Like I remember, John, you had described it as like American chibi, right? Which I think is a fitting way to describe it. It's helpful for me to think of it that way. But I think the way it's drawn, it has also just a slight bit of like the Funko Pop look to it, at least for me. Like maybe the way the eyes are, like how distant they are in the faces and such. And so it did not appeal to me. But then with the X-Men one, I don't know. I feel like it looks better. I don't know if you agree. You don't have to agree.
You're just biased to the X-Men. No.
I don't know. It's weird though, because I do like the cinematic universe probably more than X-Men, obviously with how the X-Men movies went and such, you know, but I don't know. I just feel like this box cover, it just, I don't know if it just looks more fitting, like having the American chibi style with the X-Men. I have no idea.
Well, what I was gonna say is like it does seem like the colors are a little bit not darker in like a bad way, but just kind of like the hues and the tones that they use seem a little bit more like you have more contrast of shade.
Yeah, true. I get what you're saying.
It's a lot brighter, or like there's more shine glare Maybe it's just the way that they took these pictures, but
Mm.
it does look a little bit like that. I would say in general though, like I don't think the art style to me is too much different or significant personally. I think
Mhm,
it's
mhm,
about the same.
mhm.
It could be possible that because you've seen X-Men so much in cartoon form in the past that maybe
Mm.
you're less unfamiliar with it because it's still cartoon now.
Yeah, yeah, I see what you're
Maybe
saying.
it's not, versus the other ones you may not be as familiar, maybe. But to me, I think it's like it kind of actually makes sense for the style of gameplay. It's supposed to be simplified. So chibi already, like right with the Japanese kind of style of chibi art and stuff, it already implies the simplicity of
Mm.
the circumstances in the situation. So like using this artwork in these games, it's already denoting like this is not going to be a heavy, intensive game like something that maybe use more serious artwork or more like realistic artwork or like more realism to the characters. But in that way, it's like that to me fits exactly the theme that you're aiming for with this style of game. You're
Mm.
supposed to play this fast, supposed to play it simple. You get the coolness of the characters, but it's a kind of in their fun sized package forms, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you do bring up a good point about, at least for me, maybe I am used to X-Men as cartoons, so that's why it looks more fitting. Because also this design is like how they looked in the 90s cartoon.
Yeah.
Like the costumes themselves are
Yeah.
that from that period.
Yeah, they are using all those costumes actually. Now that you bring that point up,
Mhm,
that
mhm.
is very, stays true to those art versus like modern art, right? With the new costumes from the movies or that kind of stuff.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So
And so I don't know if you remember if there's any other change that they mentioned with this new X-Men version.
yeah, it's a couple small changes. So they actually have a 5-player mode now where you
Mm.
can actually a player can play as the villain. So
Oh
you
yeah,
can
yeah,
actually
yeah.
have somebody be the villain versus in the original game, I believe, unless there was a variant in one of the later kind of Kickstarters, it was just 1 to 4 players cooperative against an AI villain.
Mhm,
But they
mhm.
do have a mode where you can have a super villain. So you have a player who actually plays as the villain. So they get to
Mm.
decide and determine activities as the villain. So if you enjoy that kind of style and you like having the 1v4 kind of styled games, you can throw that into the mix or up to 5, right? So it could be
Mhm.
1v3, 1v2 if you want. Even 1v1, I guess, if you really want. That might be interesting, but I don't know if you'd enjoy that. We'll
I
see.
mean, I think the one v all is an interesting touch in this because again, it's like we had a conversation off cam about how games like can make co-op games like more difficult, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And I think that is actually one way, right? If I'm playing like if there's like a group of us playing this game and we want to make it more challenging, we would be like, John, you're the bad guy.
Right, the villain, right?
Because John is the mastermind at evil. And so
And that's one of the cool things, right? Because sometimes like AI, like if you play a game enough, you kind of have a sense of what kinds of cards might show up or
Mhm,
how it
mhm,
might show up, but it's kind of always randomized. But if you have
mhm,
a
mhm,
player who's actually playing and just like explicitly putting cards down, they're choosing how the story develops or how the villain kind of builds up.
mhm,
So, and this is a little different than some other games where it's like sometimes that player kind of plays more as like a dungeon master, so they're not really trying to kill you, but they are trying to make your life more difficult, so it's not boring. But in
mhm,
this game, it's like, no, no, this is actually competitive at that point.
mhm,
They are
mhm.
trying to actively destroy you. So,
And so
you
I
know,
am, I am kind of curious how they're implementing that too, because it seems like, I mean, I might have missed the component, but it just seems like each character comes with their own board and deck, and the villain has their own villain board and deck. And so if someone's actually playing the villain, it's like, do they draw cards from the deck and get to choose which to play versus just flipping over the top one and doing what it says or
and
something?
that part I'm not too familiar with. I didn't watch any gameplay of
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
people doing that, so I just know that that is one of the new modes. So if
mm-hmm.
you are interested in it, you should probably either find somebody who has a version of the rules, who has tried it out. They probably have it on Tabletop Simulator that they played,
Mm.
or maybe even in like the official rule book, and maybe they talk through it on their.
Yeah, I mean, I just hope it is implemented well if they're including it.
My guess is probably that it probably flows the way that the normal game flows, just that you do have a deck of like you get to look at cards and basically you're selecting what is coming up in the storyboard because to a certain point you still want the gameplay to be the same. Otherwise, you have to change a lot of things and you have to add new components into the game, which it doesn't seem like they did that. My guess is it's probably they just have like rather than the villain card just being flipped over and added into, the next when they need to be added, that player gets to choose how to play it. Well, we'll see. Maybe there is some other variation.
Yeah, I mean, that would be my guess.
Yeah, and then the other small or the other adjustment is that villains and heroes now have special cards, unique special powers that are extra, that aren't part of their base decks, that are like super villain powers. And the villains, I think, have a few different ones, but then the heroes also have their own kind of superhero extra special effect that can trigger when a certain thing occurs.
Oh, okay.
So it's basically like conditions or event conditions that can happen in the game where you can activate it. So I believe all those cards are separate from the normal decks.
Okay. So. Okay. And so, I mean, with that, we wanted to go through the rest of this campaign with you guys just to show you basically what you can get from it and how much it'll cost you. And so there's just two pledge levels. The basic one is the Mutant Pledge, the $65, which is for the base game, which is what we kind of been showing you the box art of, and then the characters we'd mentioned, the villains, and these what are these purple ones called?
I think they call them anti-heroes.
Oh, okay.
But it's kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, the hero villains basically. And so these are the base set characters that you'll get, and then you'll also get with this Kickstarter the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. If you guys have seen the X-Men shows, you also know with Pyro, Blob, and Toad. Other villains basically to play with, I believe.
Yeah.
And then all the stretch goals, which is what Simon is known for. So these are the ones they've unlocked so far, and they're still unlocking more basically every day. And they're basically unlocking more heroes, in which each hero comes the miniature and their own deck and their character board. And then not only are there heroes, there's villains and other anti-heroes being unlocked. So as you can see with all of these, I'm not going to read all of them, but some of them are ones that you probably haven't heard of.
The other half. No,
most people haven't heard of a lot of these, I would think.
Well, unless you're an X-Men.
Yeah. And then you'll notice that these are all Kickstarter exclusive. So in backing just that basic pledge, you'll get all of these, and these might not be available anywhere else, basically. And so, you have like Feral, Polaris, Strong Eye, Boom Boom, Longshot, Dazzler. I think Polaris is cool. I think they actually did have her in the live action show Gifted.
Yeah. She was
so that was cool. Magic, Sunspot, Firestar. Magic was in the recent New Mutants movie, which I don't think did well. But Anya Taylor-Joy, she's cool.
Yep.
Phoenix with, I believe this is Rachel Summer Phoenix. I'm just gonna try to come off as nerdy as I can sound right now. Warpath might have been in Gifted also, actually. I don't remember.
He was Gifted. He was also like OG, if you know the comics and stuff.
Oh yeah, and Sunfire was oh no, never mind. I think I'm mixing him up with Sunspot. Anyway. Havoc, of course. Blink is cool. Wolfsbane was in New Mutants. Phantom X was part of X-Force. I did read that comic years ago. Captain Britain.
Not Captain America. Captain Britain.
Yeah, Captain Britain. Pixie, Weapon X, Multiple Man. And then you had the anti-heroes that were unlocked. Emma Frost, Namor, and Legion, who had his own show. And then villain, Shadow King, Callisto, Deathbird, Lady Deathstrike, which was an X-Men 2.
That's right.
Arcade, which John knows, but I don't. Sauron.
Sauron. The Ring of Power. No.
Silver Samurai. and Omega Red. I thought Omega Red was so cool actually when I was a kid.
Yep. Omega Red's legit, even though he's actually in this actual comics, but
And so
he
yeah, so
showed
those
up
are
in Marvel
all.
versus Capcom 2 and
He,
1, I think, maybe, but definitely in Marvel versus Capcom 2.
yeah. That's true.
He,
And so yeah, so those are all the stretch goal characters that were unlocked, and like I said, there's still more coming. But then what they've also started unlocking at different stretch goal levels are add-ons. So they're not free, but you can pay more for these expansion sets, similar to in the original campaign that had expansion sets, like I mentioned, for like Black Panther characters and Guardians of the Galaxy. There are other X-Men expansion sets that they've unlocked that you can add on. So the one that's still being unlocked, because they're basically unlocking each character in it, and then the set will be unlocked. You have X-Force expansion, which will have Cannonball, Domino, Strife as a villain, Shatterstar, and Cable from Deadpool 2, if you know. That's not how he's famous, but
and in Days of Future Past, right? Didn't he show up in Days of Future
Days
Past?
of Future Past. Did he?
Right?
I
Isn't
don't
he the one
remember.
that brought them back in time?
I
Or was
don't
it
remember.
Bishop?
I don't remember.
Yeah, it's been a while since I watched that movie. But
And then Strife is like Cable without the techno organic virus. That was like a super nerdy sentence, right? And then okay, so that's the first pledge level with this. Oh, actually, I guess the X-Force expansion will be a free unlock stretch goal, maybe.
Well, no. I don't think it's a free unlock. I think
Okay, so it's just in this section, but it'll be moved down to the add-on section after they unlock it.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense.
But they haven't specified how much money it is to.
Yeah, it seems like, I mean,
Oh,
you guys
no,
will see
it's a little bit more than Cable. It's like 10K, 15K more than Cable.
Oh, okay.
Once Cable's unlocked, there's an extra 15K, and then it's the X-Force expansion because it includes the box and the location.
Oh, okay. I see it like as its own separate set.
Yeah. So because you can unlock the characters, but you may not unlock the box and location.
Yeah. That's how Simon.
But it's like 15K more. So if Cable gets unlocked, people are like, they'll probably just be like, all right, let's just drop the extra to make sure we get space.
And so then the second pledge level you can do is the Apocalypse Pledge, which is basically everything we just talked about above, all those unlocked stretch goal characters with the base game, and the Horsemen of Apocalypse set. Apocalypse. Which
Ride or Die.
Which I want to say was not a good movie either.
But it's fine. Apocalypse is cool in the comics.
And so yeah, in this one, it's basically, you can see you're gonna be getting Apocalypse and his 4 horsemen, which I even remember from the cartoon too. And basically it's adding this villain set. It's a specific way of playing against Apocalypse and his horsemen, where you fight the horsemen first, and then after defeating them, then you can go on to play a game against Apocalypse, it seems. And with that, there's an exclusive Storm figure, Mohawk version Storm, which is, I think it's more just the modern version of Storm.
Yeah, and I don't think she has her own deck. I think it's just play. I don't remember if it's her own deck.
I thought I might have she has her own deck. I'm not sure either, though. It was in one of the updates. But anyway, so basically this $100 pledge is adding this Apocalypse villain set, essentially, in way of playing that mini campaign. And so aside from that, we had mentioned add-ons that were unlocked, which are basically optional buys that you can increase your pledge level by that much amount to eventually add that set to what you're getting from this campaign. And so with that, we have the X-Men Blue Team, which then has, other famous X-Men, which still annoys me that Simon did it this way because they're getting our money. But, putting some of these famous X-Men into its own separate set: Gambit, Jubilee, Rogue, Psylocke, and the villain Mr. Sinister, which all of these were in the 90s cartoon.
Yep, that's right.
And then blue team, and then there's gold team. Like this is based off the naming, I think, in the comics. There was like X-Men Blue and X-Men Gold
Yep.
series, which followed different stories. And so in gold team, you have Iceman, Bishop, Colossus, Archangel, and the villain Sebastian Shaw. And for both of these, there is an exclusive character that's also unlocked. In blue team, it's Banshee. In gold team, it's Forge.
Yeah.
And so actually all of these characters were in the 90s cartoon too.
Yeah. I mean, like almost everybody was in
Yeah.
some way or another.
And then you have the first class, X-Men First Class set, which is like their old school look,
The OG.
versus Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. For
And
those who
the one
watched
that got killed in the MCU.
yeah, for those who watch WandaVision, it's like, I don't want to fight Scarlet Witch. But she's
Not
a
her.
baddie.
Evil.
And then you have the Phoenix 5, which is based off of a more modern storyline in the X-Men comics, but still years ago, called AVX, or Avengers vs. X-Men, where there are certain X-Men characters who got parts of the Phoenix Force, and it kind of made them into villains momentarily, doing the Phoenix's bidding, and basically fighting the Avengers and such. And so yeah, so you have the Phoenix versions of Emma Frost, Namor, Cyclops, Magic, Colossus. Then you do get a hero, Hope Summers, the mutant messiah from the future.
And Summers, who knows what the Summers last name?
Yeah, Summers. Huh.
Spoiler, I won't tell.
And so in this one, yeah, John and I were reading about how this mode works. Is this game comes with a version to, you could either fight one villain, like you would in the base game, or there's a small campaign version where you choose the order in which you're fighting these 5 villains. And as you defeat one, the next game you play, the next villain will be slightly more powerful, because they basically absorbed the portion of the Phoenix Force the previous boss had. And so that's kind of cool sounding, right? Like they'll get harder and harder because they're getting more and more powerful as you're defeating the previous guys.
Exactly.
And then there is the add-on, which is the playmat, which kind of just outlines the spaces for you to play the cards in the circle and such. And so yeah, so those are all the add-ons that you can get for this Marvel United X-Men. But then also in this campaign, they allowed a way for people to add on classic Marvel United sets, basically sets from the first campaign. And so we'll just briefly show these, not go through all of them, but you can even check out the previous campaign page that I was showing here on Kickstarter to see what was available then, or even just check it out here. But know that I had heard that the prices of adding these on, like for example, this Ultimate Classic bundle is basically, it looks like it's everything from the first campaign. Maybe not, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think they only unlocked 5 other characters though. So maybe there's still exclusive characters that weren't included in this. I'm not too sure. But it does cost $220 to add all of it. Apparently it does not include the core game box. So it's all the add-ons together, which are like the promos, the Infinity Gauntlet set, Black Panther set, Spider-Verse set, Tales of Asgard, or yeah, basically the Asgard set, Guardians of the Galaxy set, and a Sinister Six set.
And we'll get to it, but they probably don't include the United Core box, and I believe that one is in retail, if I remember.
Yeah, the core box is the one that's you can get in retail. And yeah, something important we did want to point out is, well, 2 things. In looking at all these add-ons from the first campaign, I heard that each one is like about $5 more expensive than in the original campaign. So know that to jump on board with the original stuff now, it's going to cost more than it did back then, which is kind of fitting for how Kickstarter usually is run, right? People who were in on it first get to pay a little less. But then also know that not all of these sets are going to be available in retail. Like I think currently people who even backed the original Marvel United campaign are receiving these sets in waves. maybe even over this next year that they're still coming
Mhm.
and being produced and shipped basically. But then I think the news I had heard from either the Dice Tower or maybe Board Game Co., two channels that you can check out to confirm what I'm saying, is there was news that the publishers of Marvel United, I think, or Simon originally, I think in the first campaign, had said that, you know, these expansion sets would go to retail eventually. But I think the news now is that the actual publisher, I think Spin Master, I don't want to blame them incorrectly, but I think it was Spin Master was saying then that actually none of these will be going to retail later on. And so that's why you can even see here that these have this Kickstarter exclusive symbol on them for these different sets that we were just looking at. These don't have the symbol, but I feel like the news I heard was saying that none of these sets will go to retail. Maybe the Spider-Man one will or something like that. Maybe just one of these will end up in retail. And so, yeah, just keep that in mind. You might want to, yeah, again, check the Dice Tower or Board Game Code to hear the news from them too, to confirm. But if that is the case, then yeah, if you wanted to get the original stuff, this might be one of your only ways of doing so right now.
Last chances.
Yeah, and so, and that's in a way not too surprising because yeah, when Simon does run like a Kickstarter, it doesn't sell those things like, well, at least not the exclusive things elsewhere, you know. But to have none of it go to retail, that just kind of makes it rough for people. So yeah, just keep that in mind. This might be one of the, if not the only way to get in on the original stuff right now.
Mhm.
And so yeah, with that, we're just gonna, I don't know if you had any other thoughts you had to share on this, specifically the X-Men, this specific campaign, John.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe not specific to this one, but if you haven't heard of this game before, and things like that, this is a game that if you're interested in getting into cooperative games, you like the superhero theme, this might be a really good time to jump in and to get this game and this style of game. It's not a very complicated game. It is very fast to set up, as as we've talked about. It's very fast to play. It has a lot of very high praise across the board for gamers and board gamers alike. Um, for people who like complicated games and for people who don't, right? It seems like this is one of those rare moments in which you're getting a game that has a lot of simple gameplay, but has replayability, has the ability to be played with lots of people and lots of different kinds of people, whether they're first time gamers, never played board games before, or the only exposure they have is these really basic games of like Monopoly and the Game of Life and Scrabble, right? Where you can do something a little bit more, or for even kind of hardcore gamers who played, right? Like that you can, there is a lot of variety, there's a lot of strategy that can come out of these games, right? Especially with the different villains and things like that. Or even having one of those players who are gamers be a villain, for example, right? So there's a lot of opportunity, especially in this new version, that really makes this something that is probably a really good pickup for you if you're thinking about it, to do so. So I think even I was initially not sure if I would enjoy it or thought about enjoying it because of simplicity and I like complex games. But after hearing a little bit more about it, it actually is something that I'm also currently kind of thinking about as well, which I hadn't told Ben, but I'm considering
Mm.
maybe even thinking about some kind of a pledge or working with people that I know to see if we can pledge and maybe get our own set for this.
Ooh, exciting. John backing a Kickstarter.
Like never happens.
Yeah, not
Let Ben
forcing,
do all the dirty work.
yeah, not forcing me to spend all the money. So actually, but we did talk about before this, right? We were trying to decide what would I actually want to back from this. Right now, I am backed at $1, which is not a pledge level, but know that actually as kind of a tip, I guess, for those of you who want to follow Kickstarters, you can actually, I think, almost always back at $1. Like you choose the amount you want to pledge, but if you pledge at least $1, then you'll get the update emails from them as the campaign is going. So then, I think I kind of tried to do that this time because I wanted to hear the different things being unlocked, like either it's characters or even the new expansions and how they might add a new mechanic or play a little differently. So I wanted to keep up on that versus having to always come to the website to read through, go through the update pages just to find what's new. So yeah, that's a little tip. So I did $1, yeah, just to follow along. And then John and I were talking about before this, what I would maybe end up backing is the base game and the Phoenix 5. I think that one looks really cool, even though I read that specific storyline in the comics. I think the idea is kind of cool, but at least the look of it in this game is cool, especially with the way it will end up playing, with the way to fight each villain individually or in like a sequential campaign order. So I think that would be cool to do. And I think, and John made a really good point too, that all these stretch goals you're seeing mostly are unlocking heroes, where then there's like one villain unlock every few heroes, basically. And so since villains can maybe change the way the game is set up or the end goal that you want to reach, that's a big way to add that variety to the game. And so if more heroes are being unlocked versus villains, maybe I'd be okay adding a set that's more villains than heroes. And so that would be the Phoenix 5 set.
Yeah.
And then aside from that though, then John and I will still need to discuss if I should be adding either the blue or gold set, the X-Men blue or X-Men gold.
Just kidding.
Because yeah, we were talking about like which characters in which one are cooler or more interesting. And I think it was, sorry, I'm just kind of scrolling down through the stretch goals so you can see the art and the figures a little closer right now. But I will scroll back up to those sets in a little bit. Yeah, this is just quickly scrolling through so you guys can see the components, the characters unlocked, the art style with them. And with that,
Get there.
okay, yeah,
there we
those
go.
are the things that aren't unlocked yet. So going back up, oh, actually, no, here it is. Here it is. Blue.
Yep.
Has
okay heroes.
Yeah, John thinks okay heroes, but a good villain. Yeah, Mr. Sinister is a good villain, at least storyline wise. And Psylocke is kind of cool. Yep. But then Gold has some of the cool heroes. I like Colossus,
Archangel, Iceman, Bishop. Oh, such a good line.
But then Sebastian Shaw is very kind of like a.
It's just like whatever.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, do I want to add what is this Gold team?
Unless you're a villain, unless you really enjoyed that storyline, whoever's watching our videos, nothing against you with Sebastian Shaw if you really like it.
I mean, he was cool in First Class. Just comics wise, I really had no idea about him really.
Like whatever.
Yeah, the Hellfire Club and such. Not really, don't know much. But yeah, so I mean, then there's obviously the other sets, but those are ones that I think I would rather save my money. And I'm not, because I don't plan on getting everything here. I think that would be too much for me.
Yeah.
But yes, at least base set and Phoenix 5, and then we'll see about blue or gold team. But yeah, that is our preview of Marvel United. Oh man, it's a long page. Marvel United.
Scroll.
X-Men. If you guys found this interesting or helpful, I hope you'll actually check out this campaign yourself to see if it's something you want to back and be a part of, to experience, try out this game. Obviously, there is the base game that will be in retail, so maybe that's something you could just jump in with that in the future. But yeah, if you found this useful, interesting, I hope you'll share this video with friends, family, people you play board games with. Hope you'll consider subscribing to this channel and following us on Instagram at I Got Board Game. And until next time, we will see you then. Bye.